Welcome everyone to this live webinar looking at 5G for creative industries with the UK 5G Creative Industries Working Group. My name is Ivona Wilk and I'm one of the UK 5G delivery team members. This panel discussion will look at the impact of 5G on creative industries now and in the future. The panel will also talk about the use cases and business opportunities that 5G will create for producers and suppliers in the creative industries. If you have any questions you wish to ask the speakers today, please use the Q&A feature located at the bottom of your webinar dashboard, and we will aim to get through as many of these as we can. We also ask you to be respectful with any questions or comments you may have today. Like with any live digital service, there is room for technical errors. If something does arise, please be patient and we will fix this as quickly as we can. Before I introduce you to our speakers, I would like to give you a quick introduction and overview of UK 5G. UK 5G is a key partner in the UK government's aim to maximise 5G in the UK and is supported by the Department for Digital, Culture, Media and Sport. The network is delivered by a consortium comprising of Cambridge Wireless, Knowledge Transfer Network and TM Forum. It was set up with an aim to facilitate connections between various organisations involved in 5G activities across the UK, and to stimulate links between technology suppliers, technology supply and demand across industrial sectors. UK 5G also promotes UK's 5G capabilities internationally to encourage more 5G investment in the UK. Lastly, UK 5G shares the lessons and learnings from 5G projects in the UK, including the DCMS-funded Testbeds and Trials programme. I would like to encourage you to visit our website and register as a member to fully benefit from all the content and activities shared on the website. I am now going to hand over to Alex Connock, the Vice Chair of the UK 5G Creative Industries Working Group, who's going to lead the discussion with our panelists today. The discussion panel today is made up of the members of the Creative Industries Working Group and includes Claire Harvey, Matt Stack, Rory Byrne, Alexandra Personal and Ian Wagdin. Over to you, Alex.
Good morning. Thanks, Ivona. Thanks to TechX for hosting, and welcome to the session on the 5G and the creative industries. We've heard all about the capabilities that installed 5G network will offer us in terms of an extreme jump in bandwidth and zero latency. What do these things mean in practice for the major arts industries like film, TV, events, art itself, literature? What's the potential? And that's what the session aims to answer today. We've got a fantastic turnout. I think we had almost 1,000 registrations, which is really exciting. And I think that in itself sends a message about how people are engaged with the idea of what 5G and having 2 gigabytes download speed or whatever it is, you know, in their artistic endeavors. We have a really distinguished panel. I'm going to introduce them in a second. But first we want to hear from you. So we're going to launch a quick poll now. So just 3 questions on the poll. If Ivona would be kind enough to launch it. We want you to answer these questions as quickly as you can, and then we'll feed back the results to you. To just tell us who you are, basically. The question is very simple. What do you do? Where are you based? What sectors within the creative industry are you as an audience most passionate about? And that's really fascinating. You're welcome to use the Q&A at any time during the session. We'll try and play in some questions from people. I'll be keeping an eye on it. You can also reach out on LinkedIn and Twitter. At Dr. Alex Connock is my Twitter handle, and I've got them open too. So let's get on to the panel. First up, Matt Stagg from BBC Sport. Tell us what you do and why you're interested in 5G. Matt, I think you might be on mute.
Aha, there we go. Matt Stagg, I don't work for Zoom. So yeah, I work in BT Sport and in the wider BT group. We're looking at 5G for an end-to-end ecosystem, or how we like to look at it, from camera, contribution, studios, and through to distribution to multiple devices. And then around the augmented reality, extended reality, consumer end application.
Great, thank you very much. We'll look forward to hearing more about that shortly. And next up, Claire Harvey from Red Bee Media.
Hi everyone, and thanks Alex. So I've actually got two hats on. I work for Redby Media, where I look after some of our broadcast clients, and I also am the chair of the UK 5G creative industries.
Great. Next, Alexandra Personal from Immersion.
Hi, Alexandra Personal. So I'm the CEO of Immersion. We are a virtual reality discovery engine. I'm passionate about 5G because from the very beginning, I want VR content to be discovered. And that's pretty much only possible with 5G, as we need to remove the computing power of the VR devices to the cloud in order to do that, and also to have VR devices that are small enough for everybody to want to wear them.
Excellent, thank you. Next up, Rory Byrne from Imagination.
Good morning. My name's Rory. Thanks for the tee up, Alex. So I'm the EMEA Business Director for Immersive Technology at Imagination. Specifically, I'm interested in how 5G will become an enabler to carry new messages and tell stories to our audience.
Thanks. Okay, and finally, but not least, Ian Wagden from the BBC.
Good morning, everyone. Yeah, I'm passionate about 5G really because it's about what it can bring to our audiences, but also how we can really cover more events or more things, as Matt says, kind of glass to glass kind of elements. So kind of really excited about it for that reason.
Excellent. So thank you very much to all the panel for introducing themselves and their passion for 5G. Let's show the poll results. What do you do? 45% are creatives in the arts industries. That's interesting. So that's good, because that means we can really point this session towards the creative applications of 5G. Roughly a quarter of you are technical in the telecoms industry. So I guess you're interested to know the practical applications of what you do. And some people are in engineering. Nearly just over 10% are in government and in education, which is interesting. And then a good substantial number of people from the charity sector. That's interesting. 67% UK, the rest mostly Europe. I guess that's a function of the time zone, not least. That's interesting. And what sectors within the creative industry you're most passionate about? Oh, it's interesting. A really good balance there between arts and heritage, film, a strong representation of film, music, TV, obviously, advertising, events. So I think people are interested in all the sectors that we're going to talk about today. So I don't think we need to bias towards any particular sector. Let's crack on with the discussion. I thought what we would do to start with is just ask the panel, and again, don't forget, Santosh is saying you can't see the poll. You should be able to see it now, actually. I'll certainly share the results again. They should be able to see it now. Sorry about that. Let's kick off with Claire. Claire, tell us where we are right now with 5G in the UK and Europe, and what creative industry projects involving 5G are you working on?
Thanks, Alex. So I work for Redby Media, and we provide broadcast services to our friends here at BT Sport and also the BBC, but also from hubs across the world. And that includes play-out, getting media to television, OTT, distribution, remote production, as well as access services to metadata. We're also an Ericsson company, which perhaps may mean that we may be more biased than other companies, but certainly we've been very lucky to be able to have that information from Ericsson and the support to think about things. One of the areas that we're particularly interested in is live events. So higher bandwidth, lower latency means we believe that being able to bring more live events to more screens more easily, more efficiently. And that's really exciting, I think, for us, because it provides something exciting for linear schedules. We've seen the growth of on-demand platforms and catch-up platforms, but actually linear is still where most people are watching their TV, and being able to bring more appointment-to content is really exciting. And the kind of content that we're looking at is stuff that is much harder to broadcast live at the moment. So it could be a lower league game, it could be a smaller music festival, it could be a theatre show, it could be a school concert. So for the direct-to-consumer operators, it's very exciting. It means that they can get their content out there more easily, more effectively.
That's really interesting. Thanks so much, Claire. We'll come back to events, I'm sure, as we go along, because of course this should have been Glastonbury in June, shouldn't it? And I think the possibilities for event transmission are amazing. Let's crack on. Let's get everyone's introduction, and then we'll come back to discussion. Rory, tell us about what you're doing at Imagination.
Yeah, certainly. So Imagination's, we're a global independent creative agency. We focus very much on experiences. So ranging from large auto show programs to the Sydney fireworks, all the way down to sort of retail spaces. So we're very much focused on the physical location. But what we do more specifically within the telecom sector, we work with Telstra out in Australia, we work with Ericsson, and we work with Vodafone, really to develop use cases for marketing assets and content and activations to showcase the benefit of 5G. So we've done installations at Mobile Congress, we build and host the Telstra Vantage event out in Australia, and also we do a lot of work with Vodafone, sorry Matt, launching their 5G platform in the UK with the launch of the haptic rugby suit, which some people may or may not have seen, which is a nice training example, all the way through to developing fan experiences of the future, the Ricoh Stadium. So that's dioramas, 360 streams directly from the stadium itself, all with the view to build out best in class use cases for the technology to showcase the benefit for consumers.
So Rory, how real is this now? Is this all kind of fantasy stuff that you're going to do in the future, or is this actual stuff that's going on right now?
So this is actual stuff that's happening right now. Obviously, we given the COVID effect, there's been sort of a bit of a less in the amount of experiences that are going around. But so far as real briefs we're finding that have got 5G elements to it, that's still relatively high. So, there are lots of OEM manufacturers still launching phones. Oppo is a good example, where people are still building these experiences. But yeah, I mean, very much so, we are delivering 5G based experiences. So I mentioned the Vodafone launch, which was an actual 5G use case of using a haptic Tesla suit, where we had a rugby player in Coventry attacking a rugby trainer, and the rugby player in London was able to feel the force of that hit in real time, all the way through to building out real-time experiences that are being pixel streamed from Ireland out into the Middle East. So these experiences are happening, although they're very much in the case of, this is what you can do. I think we're going to start seeing a shift from what you can do into what you could do, and building out platforms that can be used by consumers going forward.
Great, thank you. Just a quick one before we move on. Philip Matessa from Kenya has texted in to say, is 5G available in Kenya? Does anyone actually know on the panel? No, no one knows.
I'll look it up. I've got a handy reference guide. Give me 2 minutes.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks. Okay, Matt, next. Tell us what BT Sport are doing in 5G.
Yes, so as I said, we're looking at it as an end-to-end. We've got a lot of active projects looking at what we can do now with how 5G is. Whilst we've got 5G and we're launching 5G as part of the BT Group, we own EE as well. However, all 5G rollouts at the moment are focused on enhanced mobile broadband, so being able to give everyone a better experience on their smartphones and tablets. But actually, already there's that brings some benefits to stadiums once we're allowed back there, where people can actually get a very good internet connection. We all struggle, and 4G as a technology struggles within stadiums and in very dense environments with lots of phones. But as a group, as I said, we're looking at it from end to end, and you can see where BT Group plays in those different aspects of athlete or camera through to end devices. So on the contribution side, we're looking at using 5G for remote, and now it's becoming increasingly apparent due to the necessities of the current situation to do more distributed broadcasting. So, you could have a commentator in one part of the country, the sound and vision mixers in different areas, talent in their own houses perhaps. And that works at the moment because it has to, over 4G and Wi-Fi. However, they're best effort networks, and we need to use 5G and put service wraps, so increase the uplink, the quality of service to make them a broadcast grade network. And then on the distribution side, we're looking at full immersive experiences, both in stadium and out of the stadium. Again, whilst people can't travel, or maybe can't travel anyway, or don't have a ticket, or can't maybe afford a ticket, we'll take that using all of the extended reality and wearables to be able to bring that experience into the home, so you're effectively sat there. And then there's one more, which is a 5G one-to-many distribution model, where instead of sending everybody a stream taking up a certain amount of bandwidth. If they're all in the same cell watching the same content, then we'll send a single stream out, acting more like terrestrial TV. So there's a benefit in terms of quality and cost.
So Matt, I've got a question for you with your kind of BT hat on from Paul Hughes at Solid Media in Glasgow. Much of the development and debate around 5G concentrates on larger industry players and access to test beds and beta kit. What's in it for the small production company like him? Is there anything that BT are doing that would enable a company like him to get into the game now?
Very much so. And as I said, I do a few things. One of the roles that I have is looking at everything that we do within BT Sport and how we can take that. And we work very closely with Ian and the BBC and a number of the other broadcasters and the smaller independent companies that may be looking at some AR facilities. And also camera manufacturers we look at, and we can get people to come in and test bonding devices. But the idea is this will not just be a service that BT, in fact, BT Sport will end up being a customer of this service, but we can go first because we use as an innovation. But it, the idea is that we and other operators are looking at this. We'll have a broadcast grade network that other broadcasters can use, but also then a platform for innovation, both at the contribution side and the distribution side. So very much a service for access for multiple people.
Thank you very much. And Justin Eichenlaub has also put into the chat, into the quick Q&A, is BT also looking at connecting studio infrastructure? And we'll come back to that as well, because I think that's the next big question. But let's move on to Ian. Ian, tell us about the BBC, obviously a rival of BT at some level. Tell us what you're...
Well, we're rivals in some ways, but we're very close colleagues in others. And those of you who follow 5G closely will be seeing me and Matt on a number of panels, and we do a lot of background work together that's extremely complementary. But obviously, we've been kind of working in a lot of partnerships over the past 3 or 4 years, really. And we started really early on with colleagues in the EBU, the European Broadcasting Union, just looking at distribution user cases and how we might use 5G to kind of reach our audiences. And if you look at the slide, you can see a number of those partnerships that are on there. I'm not going to go through them all, but I think they're broadly grouped as kind of background deep tech work, like the standards work with ETSI and 3GPP. Then we've got test beds and trials. So things like 5G XCast and Rural First, where we've actually put transmitters and transmitted radio services over 5G up in Orkney, and for that we've built hardware. So there's a 5G broadcast modem that was actually built to facilitate that in our labs. Obviously, we're working really closely with UK 5G. But also, we're doing some kind of sprint tests as well. So with IBC, this year we're really looking at some of those kind of smaller. There was a question earlier around smaller scale deployments. So we're really looking at 5G in a box and what that might mean for production teams to connect to sort of private networks. And then slightly longer term, we're in a large partnership running over the next couple of years with which is actually EU funded, to look at audio user cases for big festivals. So Sennheiser are leading on that. Claire and Redby and Ericsson are involved in working with us to develop 5G wireless studios and remote production. The challenge that we've got is a lot of the spectrum that we currently use for production is so things like radio mics and radio cameras. Some of that spectrum is under threat from the rollout of 5G. So we need to look at new solutions. And so it's a kind of two-horse thing that's going on. We're looking at these new solutions to either understand how 5G can help us deliver that technology, or we need to make the case to maintain that spectrum to carry on doing what we're doing. So we really need to have a kind of deep understanding of what we're doing in the production space. So in that area, we're kind of looking at partnerships and stuff like that. And then we're also involved in a group called the 5G Media Action Group. They look at how we can drive manufacturers to build kit, how we can get involved in regulatory stuff, rollout of spectrum, and the International Telecommunications Union, the ITU, really they look at spectrum allocations. So we're deeply involved in that to look at how we might maintain the services that we currently use, and of course all of that built on top of what our audiences want. So as we've heard, things like AR and VR experiments down in Bristol and Bath on getting kit into people's hands.
And Emma Wakeling has chipped in to say, BT at Innovation Martlesham are working with small creatives, letting them use their test bed. We did an event at their hothouse with 40 small creatives from the southeast. Also, James Robertson has come in to say there isn't actually 5G in Kenya yet, but operators talks are underway. Thanks very much.
It's on its way. There's some test beds I've found out. So
yeah,
awesome.
And Roberto says, a question from Roberto, which maybe Alexandra might like to pick up when she does her answer, is will 5G in the creative arts help to close the digital divide? That's an interesting question. Alex, over to you. Oh, where is she? Hello?
Hi there.
Hi.
In our case, I mean, where we are now, if we look at the recent couple of months, the situation has dramatically changed for the VR and AR world, especially for the VR world, which was where you had a big buzz around something called location-based entertainment. So it was about taking VR headsets pretty much everywhere in conferences, events, museums, and all sorts of cultural places. And all of these places are now no longer open and accessible. So VR is kind of, on the one hand, experiencing a boom, but on the other hand, because there is demand for social, immersive, digital experiences, but at the same time, we are not quite ready for those. And there are not enough VR headsets even out there. In the case of immersion, what has been interesting is that some of our clients who are in the high-tech sector, so T-System in our case, has been looking at solutions to utilize our current technologies, but with the current network, which is basically 4G, that's what everybody has. And what we've done is that we've tweaked, and you could say pivot a little bit what we had as a product for consumers to convert it into a B2B product that is 5G ready. So we're using the game engine. Yeah.
Let's have a look at the video. We've got
sure. So basically, this is using, this is built with a game engine called Unity, and it has a web layer. So this is a fully web-based application. They have that in their landing page at the moment. And it integrates a lot of videos. It's got video streaming into it as well. What we think is that this is now ready to be upgraded to a full VR experience going forward. We want to use it, and also fully ready to add more rich media into it, more perhaps we are thinking about using it as a live stream stage in the center, etc. So basically what 5G will do with this kind of experience is allow us to go a little bit deeper, a little bit more immersive. And now it's like we've been forced to find a bridge between where we are now and where we are heading. And it looks
really
like the network. Yeah.
This is a VR use case, and people can apply that to different fields of the creative arts, can't they? The same basic.
Yes, it's a VR use case put on a 2D web page.
Yeah, but of course, yeah. A couple of questions. Question from Kim. I don't know who wants to pick this up. Is much design work going into VR headsets? Anyone want to answer that?
I can answer that. There's certainly in the standards work, there's a study specifically around what they call extended reality. So that it's not just about VR, it's also about augmented reality, about how we can place objects in real world environments. And if you think about when this technology is likely to roll out, we've seen announcements or rumors from companies like Apple, and we've seen Google Glass, and we've seen kind of HoloLens stuff. And I think there's just looking at VR as a subject is quite narrow. So I think the augmented reality and the way that will move is really exciting for us, because we can replace those glasses with cameras and do kind of cheaper graphics and things. But there's a lot of work going on in the background to kind of work out how this stuff works over networks.
Well, here's quite a good question from Fred Poulsen. Well, I'm going to put it back to Ian since you're on. All these initiatives look really cool, but do your companies actually have access to the skills required to implement them? Where is the skill base for all of this?
So it's about partnerships. It's about learning. So for many years, 100 years, we've been involved in Spectrum. We've been doing radio things, whether those are radio cameras or radio mics or whatever. We've been doing IP networks for our big, we've just built Cardiff where everything is IP. So we've got a long history of kind of picking up technologies and moving with it, working with partners like BT or Vodafone, or even kind of UK bodies to kind of work with that. So it's just another technology that we need to
So do you have your talent in-house, or are you looking for people who've got expertise to apply to BBC, or for that matter BT or whatever? Are there jobs in this field?
I think there will be jobs in this field. I think we'll probably come back to that later as we talk about the kind of next stages. I think there are market opportunities. You know, I don't have a list of jobs that I can kind of point people at and say, you know, but I think, you know, any creative.
I'd love to comment on that if you allow me, Alex.
Go for it.
Okay, I think that's really hard. So let's be honest, you know, we're mixing a lot of technologies. If I look at what we do with these web twins, you've got Unity, so game engines. You need people who understand how to create content in that. Then we are putting layers of web, HTML, JavaScript on top. Typically, the guys who make games in game engines don't know how to do that. And then we are adding on top of that video streaming and video components, including, you know, encoding of videos, etc. This is, again, another skill. And then there is a guy in the back end that needs to understand everything about infrastructure and connectivity to make this happen. So you need great teams, you need great people, and it's try and learn. It's more about finding the right people, project management, allowing those people to talk to each other so we can debug and find solutions together. Okay,
brilliant. Okay, I want to move on because I want to talk about real creative use cases. So we talked a little bit about the technology that facilitates this, but let's talk about actual creative use cases themselves. Perhaps Claire, you'd like to start off on that one.
Yeah, I mean, just to go back to the other question, I know we moved on, but create tech is a whole area, and the schools of data around that is very interesting because you are, I think, embedding technology into creative processes you're going. And I think, you know, in very traditional places,
we can't hear you. Could you speak a bit louder?
Yes. Yeah, I'm sorry about this. I don't know what's going on.
I think we'll come back to you in a sec, Claire, when you've sorted out the technical side. Let's go to, we just had Alexandra, so let's move on a little bit. Let's go to Rory. Rory, tell us a little about some creative use cases, if you could.
Yeah, certainly. I think just before I do, it'd be good to sort of pick up on one of the last questions, actually, around what skill sets. I think it's really important to consider what 5G actually does, and that's an enabler. So when you take this into the creative realm, really these sort of skill sets to create content currently exist. How these pieces of content will be displayed and consumed by consumers is most likely to change. One of the sort of key areas that we're sort of very interested in is real-time, and Alex sort of tipped onto it a little bit earlier, which she was talking about the Unity platform. So there's a number of different real-time companies out there, but really what these companies are trying to do is build the new 3D pipeline of the future. So in a sense, a real-time engine is effectively an engine that can render content in real time, can take 3D assets from multiple different platforms and bring that into a real-time engine and then build out animations, etc. So what was traditionally seen as a games industry tool is now becoming much, much broader, moving into things like broadcast and moving into things like, you know, VR and AR experiences all run on the background of real time. So really, this new platform is going to be a massive game changer. So, I mean, there's some really good examples of how real time has started to be applied in more creative use cases outside of the gaming sector. We're now getting to the point where real time is so photorealistic that we're getting to final pixels. So, you know, as in real time engines are being produced and the content you're seeing is coming directly from them, which is a huge jump from where the technology was 20 years ago. A really good example of that is the Star Wars Mandalorian series, which is all shot in real time. In addition to this, we're seeing a lot of changes now. People are consuming content across the gaming sector. So Fortnite is a very good example of huge amount of subscribers coming into shared environments to then experience different things. So Fortnite have just premiered the new Christopher Nolan trailer, The Tenant. They've also had a number of very, very successful live events within their platform for Marshmallow Laserfeast and Travis Scott, with 12 million people jumping in and viewing it. And also just a really odd guerrilla piece of marketing from Wendy's, where they jumped into Fortnite and destroyed a load of freezers because they don't freeze their food goods. So all of these new platforms are sort of coming together. And this is, I think, one of the really pinnacle points. 5G is an enabler, but you have a convergence of lots of different technologies coming together. So there's a need to look at, you know, how that content's being produced, and real time is starting to answer that question. And why it relates back to 5G predominantly is because things like pixel streaming become a reality with 5G. So the devices themselves don't need to have very heavy computing power within them. So they can become thin clients. And this year we've got 6 headset tethered devices which should be coming out. So the Nreal device has already been launched. Oppo are developing their own augmented reality headset, and Panasonic, and obviously you mentioned it earlier, but Apple are coming to the fore soon.
That's a question actually we've had, and I don't know who wants to answer it, from Mara Medini, who says, how will 5G latency be lower if processing is being done remotely in the cloud? Anyone want to pick that up?
I'd be quite happy to pick that up. It was something I was going to touch on later on anyway. One of the best things, in fact, I could have written this question myself. In fact, I wish I had. Is one of the pieces that 5G drives is the capability to compute at the edge. So you start to run into this concept of edge cloud. When we talk about wearables, one of the things that we're actively looking at in the lab is how you can move the GPUs to the edge, take advantage of low latency, and do all of the rendering and the hard work at the cell site, or maybe one step back. So you have the advantage of the ultra low latency, only going the distance to the nearest cell site, and also offloading that processing power means that the wearables that are being designed will now have to be lighter. It doesn't have to be wearables, but it's a good example, which means they can look more like glasses. There starts to be a take up. You're not looking at a sort of cut down VR headset, which a lot of them are now. And Rory mentioned Nreal, and there's other companies. They're starting to look like glasses.
Excellent. Thank you so much. The only reason I'm pressing is because we've got so much we want to talk about, and we haven't got too much time. Just a quick question from Stephen: how do we sit against other industries in trying to get a media entertainment slice in 5G? I wonder whether we could have another go at Claire for that one. Just do you think that entertainment is high enough in the technical queue for the 5G provision?
Hi, is that any better? I did
a little bit
the
better,
volume button, so hopefully it's a bit better. So media and entertainment is definitely going to drive the take up of 5G because of the size of media files that are enormous, and they are filling up our network. So media and entertainment are one of the reasons that people will move, while the industry will move into a 5G world. As a sector, it's not necessarily adopting as fast as perhaps manufacturing and utilities, which are adopting private networks a bit sooner. And that seems to be an area where it's a bit easier to do it because, of course, the variances across the area. But there's no doubt that media entertainment will drive the take-up of 5G.
Great, thank you so much. Another quick question from Amanda Phillips. How do you think 5G could impact the future of education? A vast area that we haven't even touched on yet. Anyone want to pick that up quickly?
I'll make a go at it. I'm no educationalist, but I think when we talk about live events, if you couldn't hear me before, and remote production, I think this is what is very exciting for all content sectors, whether it's a conference or an event or providing educational content to schools, and being able to bring content from more places more efficiently is something that's really exciting. And I think there's tremendous scope to be able to offer up those opportunities to the education sector as well as everyone else.
Okay, yeah, just going back to my original core question on the creative applications of 5G. Ian, do you want to give us some insights from the BBC's perspective on what we can do creatively with 5G, never mind the technology?
Yeah, I mean, the technology is great, but I think actually there's some really interesting things coming along, and there's a whole bunch of stuff that we've seen coming into that companies from around the world are raising as things they want to do. So, things we don't even think about that much yet. So haptics, a technology called multimodality, which is kind of getting inputs from multiple Internet of Things devices that then personalizes your content to you as an end user. So if the access is there, or the devices that are there that are sensing your temperature and sensing your environment and sensing what you're watching on the telly, then there's all sorts of information that can be gleaned by that, and then services that can be delivered, whether those are entertainment services, they could be medical services, they could be education services. So the more the more the modern world relies on data, the more we have to have a pipeline for that data to be delivered and collated, and using artificial intelligence to kind of process all of that. And 5G is really a glue that brings a lot of that. It's not just one technology. It's not just about mobile phones. It's a kind of suite of technology that glues a lot of that stuff together.
Yeah.
So much. Yeah. Alexandra, I think I want to get your take on creative possibilities, but while you're doing that, can you just work in an answer to Will Saunders's question? Could the panel tell us, in their opinion, what would make a really successful 5G create application, and what kind of things are you working on in this space?
Yeah, so basically it's the same answer for both, I think. Great. Over the past 2 to 3 years, if you just look at the UK, there has been a program called Audience of the Future, for example. And beyond Audience of the Future, tremendous amount of companies who have invested in VR and AR entertainment products, so creating applications and experiences. Some of them made by, you know, the likes of the Tate or National Gallery, you know, really beautiful cultural content. I think what's missing today is 2 things for that. One is the access to it is very difficult. Why? Because it used to be accessed physically on site. So now it needs to be digitalized and brought together in a platform. And the other part is going to be very interesting going forward, especially for VR, everything VR, is to collaborate. You need to be multiple people in VR, otherwise it becomes incredibly boring very quickly. And so what I think is going to be an application of 5G and XR very, very soon, as soon as we've got the 5G over the edge all over the country, is the ability to go to cultural places, but in the sense of novel cultural experiences, like XR experiences, not the reproduction of reality in digital, but something more like Fortnite and Travis Scott kind of experience that we will have together.
It's interesting that we held a UK 5G event at the National Gallery, and it was interesting how well attended it was by people who worked in the museums and galleries sector. Yeah. And that, you know, a sector that some people might have thought as not cutting edge technically was actually incredibly keen to engage with the possibilities of VR, AR, and so forth. That's really fascinating. Just a quick question from Martin Brown, which I'm going to fire at Matt. Do you think 5G will drive more phone-based TV production, since you work for a phone company ultimately? What do you think about that?
Ian's going to laugh because he does think that I write some of these questions, only because we have been using, we've been using it, as I mentioned, distributed production to get it online with, we've had some of our talent in with the social distancing. It's sometimes very difficult to get a camera crew there. I think we're going to see a lot, and we always talk quite often about what 5G does for tier 1 sport, but actually it's what can it do for other tier of sports. You know, we have the opportunity to bring in what would be a sort of small YouTube-based production of something, I don't know, like a I don't know, lower league football or even Sunday league football. And it gives the ability with the cameras that you've got now and 5G cameras to be able to use that to start to put together, you know, a really nice looking production. And there's not the barrier to entry that you normally get to put something in together. And also, you know, if you want to be able to do it live and have, you know, sport's always better live, then you can start to be able to guarantee, you always put sort of brackets around guarantee, because, you know, but we're starting to put like service level agreements. So at the moment we've got 4G, everybody's on the same network. It's all you can eat. You know, we never used to worry about uplink bandwidth. It was never used, but now it's used a lot more. Personal broadcasts, send it social media updates. So this will then allow that company, you know, that own the sports or the rights, to be able to send that, knowing that it would be as solid as what would be a satellite link, or, you know, as close to a fiber. So very low cost barrier to entry, which is going to be great for some of the sports that don't have, you know, multi-millions of pounds of sponsorship.
Yeah, that could be a real revolution, couldn't it, in sport? Okay, let's move on. So we've got 10 minutes left. So I really want to just get down to brass tacks and talk about the business opportunities in 5G in the creative industries. Perhaps we'll start with someone who's in the marketing business. Rory, tell us where do you think people who are listening can sort of make money, if you like, in this area?
Yeah, so I think I think one of the main things to think about is currently what the market is currently doing. So if you look at marketing and PR, etc., what we're being asked to do is to develop great use cases for the technology to demonstrate the power of what it could do. So I think what's really, really important is when looking at these sort of use cases, seeing if there is a way to track that money from where the CMO is spending it all the way down to where the CTO and the CEO could start to use it. So how could these use cases be transferred into business cases and then become platforms and applications for people to use? You know, I think we're going to see a change in the market over the next 5, maybe 10 years, from obviously service change to OEM and product change. But currently where we kind of are at the moment is really just proving it out. So the operators looking at how they can develop great experiences that can get people to effectively sign on to 5G networks. So there are some fantastic use cases in stadiums, as Matt was sort of mentioned before, but also, coming back to my first point, you really have to look at, what are the big shifts that we're seeing across the market, because 5G itself is not its own singular ecosystem. You need content providers, you need platforms, you need locations, etc. So that's kind of where I was coming from the 3D side. So real-time really in 5G is sort of are coming together to converge to build out these new pipelines of the future, but new content streams of the future. They'll enable things like the AR glasses that everyone can wear because the cost will come down. Everything can run through thin client devices, etc. It'll open up spatial computing. So, it's very difficult.
Just kind of attack. Who's going to pay you money to do this? Is this big brands who are going to pay you money?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, so obviously brands are sort of looking to showcase their message. So one of the core things that you can do from a creative standpoint is go into storytelling. So what we're seeing is a shift away from storytelling as a one-way conversation, moving into a more interactive form of storytelling.
Oh, okay, yeah, and that would apply to multiple fields of the arts, wouldn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And it's not just, VR and AR, they're great platforms, but not to come back to the 3D pipeline again, but that's useful across TV content, film content, etc. So really, I think the point I'm trying to get to here is, right, there is no one silver bullet to make money in 5G. All of the skill sets that you need to demonstrate the relevance of 5G are currently there. So all these skill sets in TV production, etc., and content creation are there. It's just the new way that this content is going to be delivered, and it's going to be spatially aware. It's going to be very much personalized to you. Ian sort of mentioned before around data, and that's, in effect, that's a new creative platform that we can work with because it can give us real-time data of the environment you're in. So okay. Yeah, so it's a big question, where can you make money? But there are a lot of things converging at the moment, and there are a lot of new ways to tell stories in interesting ways. So I think that's probably one of the main hints I would give to sort of focus down and see how you can get these technologies converge and produce great experiences or great stories.
Okay, let's hear back from the other end of the spectrum, from Ian. Tell us about money, business opportunities, in the
okay. One of the most hated questions I have when I do these panels is, how can the MNOs make money? For me, it's not about that. It's how can you save me money? And but I really do think that there's kind of space for new entrants in the market. Okay, so we need a ubiquitous kind of always on service. We kind of want to get stuff from everywhere, and in order to do that, we've got to have access to spectrum, access to bandwidth, access to kit. And it's unlikely that as an individual broadcaster, even as a group of broadcasters or content creators, we can afford to have those slices or deploy those networks. So we need a kind of middleman who can kind of broker spectrum, broker bandwidth that can kind of enable us to buy that in a sensible way based on the requirements that we have. So if I'm a news operation, I'll ring somebody up and say, I want a 20 megabit uplink from position A for half an hour. If I'm a sports, then I might want a higher bandwidth with better quality of service deployed at a certain place. So I think there's a market that could emerge in that space. And bless the MNOs, Matt, you know how much I love you, but you haven't got universal coverage. So I need somewhere that I might need to be on an EE network one day, I might need to be on a Vodafone the next day. Buying a SIM that blocks me into a single network is a crazy way of working. And we've already seen roaming SIMs.
A bit of a reinvention of the model of buying.
Yeah, exactly that.
I totally agree. As BT Sport as a standalone, we want to be able, as I said, we'll be a customer of a network that BT built. So, it's very good for us to be able to put that in, because we know what other sports companies and broadcasters want, and we're not just designing something that we think other people might buy, and it actually does make the investment cycle and where we put investment for everyone's benefit. We're not wasting money.
Okay, but Matt, just getting down to the basics of it, what if you're a production company, let's say, how could you make money in 5G?
So so first of all, you get the ability to, number one, and we always say this, is wherever you have a fiber connection, you'll use fiber. What 5G enables you to do is to be able to get to those areas where you don't have, where you might use satellite at the moment, and satellite trucks and lots of things like that. So there's a cost piece, that cost, total cost of ownership hasn't been done. One of the things that, and it goes back to businesses and what will happen, new use cases will come out. It's that whole thing of a lot, if you were a company at the moment, you wouldn't be designing something now around 5G. But as 5G rolls out, and as we start to get some of these additional functions and features and functionalities, people are going to come and say,
going back to that earlier question we had from Glasgow, when do you think it's going to be viable for a smaller production company to really get involved in 5G as a business opportunity?
There's going to be different stages. If we talk about, what Ian said there about, being able to almost dial up and have a 5G connection and all the automation, we're a long way out. But at the moment, we have a consumer 5G download network. As we move up and we start to get the non-standalone core, we start to get new functionalities, increase the uplink, then we can start to look at putting a quality of service. And it doesn't necessarily, everybody talks about network slicing. That's a technology. Actually, what the MNOs need to take is the requirements. And then, I'll be honest, as a broadcaster, I don't want to know the nuts and bolts of the network. I want to say, I've got these requirements, latency, variance, bandwidth, these locations. Now, go away and get me whatever, and I don't tell me.
Let's ask Claire the same question. What's the business opportunity?
I mean, I agree with what everyone has said. I think there's opportunities we can see in the future, and then there's the unknown unknowns, which are things that will even come out of some shed when someone's trying to solve something else. And I think the array of technologies that's coming is really quite exciting. I mean, we've been on this journey for some years now, but 5G is a different set of technologies to 4G, and that's really exciting. And I think for me, as we're coming out of, we're still in this corona world, and we have got some very significant global events that we need to think about around climate, around how we live and how we work. I think what is exciting about 5G is that it can offer some solutions to that around remote working. You don't need to travel to the office every day, you don't need to go on an aeroplane. You can be a little bit more sustainable. And I think that's a very exciting opportunity for us all to think about in terms of how we embed those things into how we live every day.
Okay, finally, and Alex and Alexandra, just a final quick answer on the business opportunity in 5G.
I think the business opportunity is to innovate first. So you got to take some risk. You probably need to create applications that demand to consume a lot of data. So to put videos, 3D models and things like that in your innovation, artificial intelligence. And I mean, that's where your customers are going to be interested. It's if you innovate, and to innovate, you're going to use those technologies, create something new, put 5G on it, and then go and try and sell it, or potentially find a customer who is interested to innovate with you to be first. I think that's where the money is.
Well, we've got a closing poll. I just want to launch, if the audience wouldn't mind just answering this poll. Somebody complained in the earlier poll that we didn't have a none of the above option, and I plead guilty to that. The problem is that we don't really find anything out from none of the above, and Zoom compels you to actually give hard answers rather than leave empty spaces. So sorry about that, but that was the reason. If you could just answer that poll, and while you're answering it, I'll just go back to each of the panel just for a final thought before we go. 5G in the creative industries, what's the opportunity? How excited are you and why? Let's start with Ian.
Well, I mean, Okay, so I run an EBU group. There's 500 members in that. There's, as you say, 1,000 people registered for this this session. There's a lot of excitement. There's a lot of hype, and there's a lot of opportunities there for people to kind of dive in with both feet. But I think, as Roberto says in the chat, the content is king. And at the end of the day, if we don't provide good content and new content and new forms of content to the audiences, then we're not doing our job. So I think 5G is an enabler to both making and distributing that content, and it will be the way that people access our services. So I think that for us is kind of like why it's so important.
Brilliant. Rory?
Yeah, I think just sort of echo Ian's comment there. I mean, fundamentally, 5G is an enabler. It's low latency, high capacity, and high bandwidth. What that allows us is, you know, access to greater wealth of technology. So things like thin clients become a reality, and, you know, pixel streaming becomes a reality, and we can start to leverage things like machine learning, and digital twin becomes a thing. So all of these points basically democratize technology to the point that you can start to implement them successfully in your creative executions. So that's going to open up things like, you know, the Internet of Senses, being able to play with people's senses. Let's say we mentioned haptics before, but, you know, it's not just constrained to screens. This is a revolution in how we'll consume data and change experiences through live data. So it's super exciting.
Matt?
Yes, so I think I'm quite excited about some of the things we've discussed today. I really enjoy the new things we learn by doing proof of concepts. And it's not just proving that something you think about works. And I guess I give a very quick example of when we did a trial of remote production using 5G. We used the stadium because we wanted to get a match, and we were sponsoring it. But what we found, and we'd always said stadiums where they lead to fiber, we didn't think 5G cameras were going to be necessary because you already have it. But actually, the creative opportunities that gave our directors meant that, you know, we could do things that they'd not been able to do before. You can put someone on a cameraman on the back of a bike and take him out with a 5G sim on a broadcast grade network. And meet the team bus coming in, and that was when we said, okay, well, we actually need to change our roadmap to say, how do we have a mix of untethered 5G cameras with fixed 5G cameras? And then it led to, you know, being able to
mix the model. Okay,
yeah, and that's the best thing. I'm excited about the stuff we don't know yet.
Okay, all right, Alexandra.
I think what's exciting is to connect people to new creative experiences. So the connection between connecting people and the creative industry, and mix these two things.
Your passion comes through. Thanks so much. And finally, Claire.
I think there's a whole wealth of things in the media sector where I work, you know, it will enable innovation along the supply chain from distribution, production, and we've heard from Matt and from Ian how we can do that. And I think it can be used to solve some immediate problems that we have in our society around climate and sustainability. So I think it's got a huge amount of potential power that can be used for all sorts of innovations for good.
And when 5G comes on stream, I'm sending some around to your house so we can all hear you properly on the next.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Let's share the results. It's actually quite interesting. So the favorite answer for the creative opportunities was actually the most arcane one, really, which is the cloud-based processing power brought to bear for new creative outlets. And I think that kind of reflects what the panel have been saying in a way, is that this isn't just the remodeling of what we've already got, but this is actually new ways of doing creative stuff, which is fascinating. Performing arts are strong, AR, sports strong, you know, all the talk we've had of the untethered cameras and so forth has been really strong. So there's strong interest really across all the different possible applications of 5G. And then in terms of business opportunities, it seems to be this remote opportunities for production solutions for events. So I guess that would be sport and music and doubtless other things too, which is really coming through strongly as well. So it seems to capture people's imagination in ways that go slightly beyond the kind of traditional architecture of what we mean by the creative industries and how we make content at the moment, which I suppose plays really well to Ian's point, which is that it's not just a reiteration of the past, it's something new and different. That's it from me. I'm going to hand back to Ivona now. Thanks again to all the panel for doing a great job. And thanks for all the questions. We've got through some. There were more we couldn't get through. Some of them were quite technical, so I thought perhaps not for this particular session because we're trying to focus on the creative industries as a creative activities. I'm going to hand back to Ivona. Thanks again.
Thank you, Alex. And thank you everyone for joining us for this webinar today. And I hope you all enjoyed it. Shortly, we'll be able to listen to the webinar session on demand. And please make sure you have signed up to receive this content if you wish to access the recording. You can do this either via the registration to join the session today or via the TechX website. We also want to thank everyone for their questions today. Any questions that we were not able to get to, but the panelists are keen to cover, will be posted on the TechX website under the session overview. Also, a big thank you to our panelists today for the great webinar and looking at the impact of 5G on creative industries. For more information on upcoming webinars, please visit UK 5G website and TechX website. And thank you for tuning in, and we look forward to having you join us at another digital webinar in the near future. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Ivona. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.